My child, stop. Stop right now, before you scroll past this. Before your mind tells you it has heard something like this before. Before the noise of everything else pulls you away from what I need you to hear. Something was working to keep this message from reaching you. Something was interfering with the signal, making this harder to find, harder to click, harder to stay with. But you opened it anyway. You are here. And that single act of stopping, of staying, has already been recorded in a place where nothing can be erased. Most people would have scrolled past this title. You did not, and I need you to understand that was not simply curiosity. That was recognition. Something deep in you recognized what the surface had not yet translated into words. You knew before you pressed play, before you read a single sentence, that this was for you. That is not coincidence, my child. That is what it looks like when I pull a soul toward the word it needs to receive. There is something I am about to show you, a record I kept. An event that happened in a realm your eyes cannot see, but whose effects you have been living in for longer than you realize. I am releasing it to you now because your waiting time is over. Because the season of carrying this quietly, alone, without explanation for why you have endured what you have endured, is ending. Because what happened in the spirit realm because of you deserves to be told, and I am the only one who can tell it in full. I was there for all of it. I watched every moment. If something in your chest shifted when I said that, if something loosened or tightened at the words your waiting time is over, that was not accidental. That was the part of you that already knows. The part that has been holding what I am about to confirm, recognizing truth before your mind has had time to argue with it. Do not dismiss that sensation, my beloved. It is the first evidence of what I am here to show you. If you felt it, type "I felt it before I had words." Type it not as a hope. Type it as a record. Because when you type it, heaven reads it as your confirmation that you were here, that you received this, that the word landed in the place it was always meant to reach. My child, what I am about to tell you changed the structure of your protection. It changed who is responsible for keeping you safe. It reclassified you in a way that has no human equivalent and no comparable precedent in your generation. And it happened not because of something you performed. It happened because of something you refused to stop being, even when stopping would have been so much easier, even when the cost of continuing was everything you had. I want to begin at the beginning, not the beginning of your life, though I was there too, designing everything that was about to be placed inside you. I want to begin at the moment the alarm triggered, because there was a moment, a specific, identifiable moment in the spiritual realm, when something you did registered at a frequency that should not exist in ordinary human beings. And when the alarm sounded, my child, I watched what happened next from a distance that is no distance at all, because I am everywhere. But I watched with an attention that I reserve for events that are rare. And this was rare. You were going through something. I do not need to name it precisely because you know exactly what season I am describing. You were in it. You were carrying a weight that was not designed for one person, and you had been carrying it so long that you had stopped calling it heavy and started calling it your life. You were facing something that, by every measurement available to the human mind, should have broken you. Every indicator was pointing toward an outcome that would have justified giving up. The logical conclusion of the evidence around you was surrender. Anyone watching from outside would have understood. Anyone who knew your situation would have extended you grace for walking away. The pressure was real. The exhaustion was real. The cost of continuing was documented and enormous. And you did not stop. You did not stop, my child. Not because you felt nothing. And this is the part I need you to hear clearly because it matters. You are not a person who does not feel fear. You felt it completely. You felt the weight of the worst possible scenario. You sat with it. You turned it over and examined it from every angle. You understood exactly what was at stake and exactly how badly it could go. You trembled. Some nights you considered, in the quiet and the dark, whether the thing you were carrying was yours to carry at all. Whether you had the right to still believe in what you believed in. Whether the evidence had finally outweighed the faith. And then something deeper than logic spoke. Something older than your circumstances. Something I placed in you before any of this began said, I do this even though I am afraid, not because the fear is gone, because the fear does not get to decide. And in that moment, my beloved, in that specific moment of choosing movement over stillness, and faith over evidence, and forward over comfortable retreat, the alarms went off in dimensions you cannot see with your physical eyes. This is how darkness operates, my child. I want you to understand the system so you can understand what happened. The forces that work against human souls operate primarily through fear, not through power, not through authority, not through any genuine strength they possess, because I want to be clear about something. They have none that I have not permitted. They operate through fear because fear is the lever. Fear is what stops people. Fear is what turns potential into paralysis and destiny into delay. When darkness introduces a fear, and that fear becomes the deciding factor in what someone does or does not do, the system functions as designed. But when a soul encounters fear, feels it fully, understands the stakes, sits with the worst possible outcome, and then chooses to move forward anyway, not because the fear was wrong, but because the calling is louder, the system breaks down. The calculation fails. The outcome the system was designed to produce, which is a stopped soul, does not occur. And when a soul does this not once but repeatedly, not in small matters, but in the defining choices of their life, not when the cost was manageable, but when the cost was everything, something registers that the system was not designed to process. You became a mathematical problem that darkness cannot solve. Type, "I know what this is." Type it as someone who has always carried something that other people found hard to explain, something in them that refused to negotiate with fear the way they were supposed to. Type it as an identity statement, not a feeling, because this is who you are. This is what I placed in you, and it is time for you to know what that placement has been doing in the invisible realm while you were simply trying to survive your life. I watched the moment the emergency meeting was called. I want to tell you what that looked like, because you have a right to know what happened in your name, even in realms you could not enter. I watched them pull your file. I watched the review begin, and I want you to understand what your file means in that context, because it is not a metaphor. Every choice you have ever made, every private moment of decision, every time you chose the hard right path over the easy wrong one, every time you maintained your integrity when compromise was available and nobody would have known, every time you carried someone else's weight along with your own and did not demand credit, every time you chose suffering with righteousness over comfort through compromise, every one of those moments is documented. Darkness keeps records because darkness needs to understand what it is dealing with. They brought in specialists, my child. I watched them. The one who specializes in despair was called first, because despair had been deployed against you and had not worked. They reviewed the deployment. They reviewed every season when the wait should have been enough, when the evidence against continuing was overwhelming, when the silence from heaven felt too long and the cost felt too high. They reviewed every tool in their arsenal that had been aimed at you, and they were looking for the crack, the place where it had worked, the moment when despair had landed somewhere permanent and useful. They could not find it. Not because you were without pain. You were in extraordinary pain. But despair is not the same as pain. Despair is the conclusion that the pain is final, that it will not change, that hope is a lie. And that conclusion, no matter how hard it was aimed at you, never fully landed. There was always something in you that refused to sign off on hopelessness, even on your worst nights. The specialist's testimony went something like this: "This soul processes fear better than our own entities. I need you to understand the weight of that statement." They were describing you in a debrief about why their most sophisticated tools had failed, better than their own, not resistant to fear, not unaffected by fear, processing it differently, more effectively, arriving at the other side of fear, not through avoidance, but through the kind of passage that only I can walk someone through. The second testimony came from the one who tests through chaos, who deploys the worst-case scenario, who arranges circumstances to produce maximum uncertainty and hopelessness, and tests whether the soul will hold. This one had tested you with scenarios designed to be overwhelming. Not one scenario, multiple, layered. Time to arrive when other resources were depleted, when support systems had thinned. when the previous challenge had already extracted nearly everything available. The testimony this soul was tested with worst-case scenarios every single time it chose the difficult correct path. It was not what was expected. And the third testimony, my beloved. This is the one I want you to feel the full weight of, the one whose domain is the shortcut, the easy compromise, the opportunity that arrives with a hidden price tag, the open door that leads somewhere you were never supposed to go. This one had watched you have access to things you did not take, opportunities that were real, that were available, that would have solved immediate problems, and that came with a condition that was small enough to seem invisible. The condition was always a small erosion, not a dramatic fall, just a slight compromise of the thing you carried at your center, the integrity that I placed there when I designed you. This one's testimony, I offered every available shortcut. All were refused. This soul prefers to suffer doing right over prospering doing wrong. My child, I watched them say that about you. I watched the specialists look at your file and come to conclusions that made their own framework unstable, because everything they operate on assumes that the soul, under sufficient pressure, will eventually choose the path of least resistance. And you had chosen, repeatedly and consistently, and at enormous personal cost, the path of most integrity. You had chosen it so many times that the pattern was undeniable, even to those who needed you to be different. And then the one who reviews all cases that the specialists cannot resolve reviewed your complete file. Every moment of private courage when no one was watching. Every decision when the easier option was available and the harder option was the honest one. Every prayer you prayed in the dark that no one heard but me. Every time you helped someone who could give you nothing in return. Every moment when the cost of being good was real and you paid it anyway. He sat with it for a long time, my beloved, and then he said something I want to give to you now as a gift, because you have earned the right to hear what your adversary said about you in a room you could not enter. He said, "This soul has fiber that I respect." I watched heaven go completely still when he said that. Not because we needed his opinion confirmed. I already knew who you were. I designed who you are. But there is a gravity to hearing it said by the one who has studied every human weakness and built systems around exploiting them. Looking at the record of your life, your private life, the life you lived when no one was watching and there was no audience, and the only witness was me, and arriving at the word respect. He does not say that word easily. He says it almost never, and he said it about you, because you have stayed with me through this, my child. What I am releasing now is not just for those who read the first few lines. What I am about to tell you was prepared specifically for those who held on. Not everyone will hear this. You did. Receive it. If something in your shoulders settled when I said that, if something in you that has been braced for a long time let itself exhale, do not dismiss it. Type, "I was there." Type it as a witness account, not a request. Because I am telling you what happened in your name in a realm you could not see, and what I need from you is not agreement. I need you to understand that you already know this. Some part of you has always known that what you carried was heavier than ordinary, that the resistance you faced was more organized than coincidence, that the cost of remaining who you are was higher than it should have been. You knew. You kept going anyway. Type "I was there" as someone who lived this record, not someone who is hearing it for the first time. After the testimonies were complete, a decision was made. And this decision, my beloved, is the reason the landscape of your life has been shifting in ways you may not have fully understood yet. The decision was to make you an offer, not with a signed contract, not with explicit terms. Through real situations, through circumstances arranged to look like opportunity, through exactly the kind of doors that appear in real life. Two kinds of doors appeared. The first was an opportunity that seemed too good to be calibrated perfectly to what you needed, arriving at a moment of genuine need, offering a solution that would have worked, that would have provided relief, that would have answered a real and pressing question. The only cost was small, a slight compromise. Not an obvious sin, not something dramatic, a small erosion of the thing you carry at your center, the fiber they had described, something that would have been invisible to anyone watching, but that would have registered as a shift at the level of who you fundamentally are. I watched you encounter it. I watched you feel the appeal of it. I watched you understand, somewhere below conscious thought, that the door was real, but the threshold carried a price. And I watched your inner compass, the one I placed there when I designed you, point north. And I watched you follow it. Not with a speech, not with a declaration, not dramatically, quietly, without fanfare. With nothing but the kind of simple cellular refusal that comes from a soul whose fiber is not negotiable. The second was the moment when revenge was available. When the person or the situation or the circumstance that had caused you harm was vulnerable, and the option to return the harm was genuinely on the table. I do not mean a fantasy. I mean a real-world available action that would have been, by most human standards, understandable, justifiable, even arguably fair. You had been wronged. The person who wronged you had an exposed position. You could have acted. I watched you not act. Not because you felt nothing, you felt the pull. You felt the justice of it. The way justice sometimes looks like retaliation when you have been in pain long enough. And I watched something in you. Something that goes deeper than strategy, deeper than calculation, deeper than wondering whether it would work. I watched something in you that understands the difference between justice and vengeance, recognized that line and refused to cross it. Quietly, without asking for credit, without telling anyone, without requiring me to explain why, just, this is not mine to take, and you walked away from it, my child. I need you to understand what I saw in that moment. I watched the authorities who had been studying you receive the result of both tests, and I watched the declaration come. You were declared untouchable, not as a kindness, not as a reward in the way rewards are usually understood, as recognition by merit, as the activation of an ancient code that operates even in darkness. Because even darkness has boundaries it must observe when those boundaries are established by what a soul has proven itself to be. The code is this: when you find a soul that is genuinely incorruptible, a soul that has been tested under sufficient pressure with sufficient temptation and has consistently refused to compromise its fiber, you do not continue attacking. You reclassify. You stop sending resources against that target because those resources will be absorbed and returned to sender. You declare the territory protected, not because you choose to protect it, but because the soul's own character has made it impenetrable. You were placed on a list, my beloved. I want to tell you the weight of that. Fewer than 100 living souls on this planet are on that list right now. Not because the others are less valuable, not because I love them less, but because the combination of fiber and testing and refusal and persistence that your life has demonstrated has reached a threshold that most never reach. Not through perfection. You are not perfect. I do not require perfection, and I have never asked for it. Through refusal to quit, through choosing the harder right thing so many times that the pattern became undeniable even to those who needed you to be different. This is mine. Type, this is mine. Not I hope this is mine or I want this to be mine. This is mine because the word I just spoke over you is not a possibility I am extending. It is a recognition I am confirming. You are already on the list. The declaration has already been made. I am telling you now because you needed to know, because carrying the weight of this without understanding what it meant has been harder than it needed to be. And because your knowing changes how you walk forward from here, if what I have just revealed is settling into you. If something in the place where you have been carrying questions without answers is beginning to shift, I want to invite you to respond, not just in your spirit, but in a tangible act of faith. Someone came to your heart while you were receiving this. A name, a face. A person you love who also needs to hear that they are not abandoned, that their fight has been witnessed, that heaven has kept their record. Sow a seed today, not for yourself, but for them. Sow it in their name as a declaration that what you just received is real and that you believe it will reach them too. Visit the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. Every seed sown in the courage of what you just heard returns as harvest for the person you planted it for. Because you have stayed this far, what I am releasing and what comes next was prepared specifically for those who held on. Not everyone received what I am about to give you. You did, and it matters what you do with it. Now I want to tell you what happened when heaven received the declaration that you were untouchable, because the response from my side did not look like an immediate flood of visible blessing. I want to be honest with you about how this works, because you deserve honesty more than comfort. Heaven's response activated something called the Confirmed Warrior Protocol. And what that means in practical terms is this: your protection was upgraded, your assignment was elevated, the resources allocated to your work and your calling were adjusted to match the level you had proven yourself operating at, and the doors that were positioned for your season were queued for release at the right moment. But before I tell you what is coming, I want to tell you what has already been happening, because the 5 signs are already operating, and you may have been attributing them to coincidence or luck, or even strange misfortune when some of them arrived as protection and not punishment. The first sign: the attacks that were directed at you are returning to sender, not always visibly, not always immediately, but the ancient law of return, the one I established before any of this began, operates under my direct supervision over your life because you are under my specific covering. When a weapon is formed against someone in your category, the weapon does not simply fail, it reverses. I want you to think about the people who have tried to break you. Think about what has been happening to them, not to you, to them. Think about the schemes that were formed against you and what has become of the people who formed them. That is not coincidence. That is the ancient law operating exactly as written. The second sign: people with bad intentions cannot maintain comfort in your presence. They cannot explain it. They become restless. They find reasons to leave. They create distance without knowing why, only knowing that something in them is uncomfortable near you, that your presence creates a kind of internal friction they cannot name or resolve. This is not a gift for your benefit. It is a protection mechanism for your assignment. I cannot afford to have certain presences in your life at this stage, because I know what I am about to release through you. And those presences would compromise the clarity required, so they leave, sometimes dramatically, sometimes quietly, sometimes with an excuse you did not expect. The result is the same. The terrain around you is being cleared. The third sign: doors have closed in your life that felt like failure at the time. Opportunities that fell through. Relationships that did not work out the way you hoped. Positions that were offered and then pulled back. Paths that were open and then closed without explanation. I need you to receive a reframe, my child, because some of what you have called failure was protection. I saw what was at the end of certain paths. I saw what certain opportunities would have cost you in the season that followed. I saw what certain relationships would have required from you at a stage when your assignment needed different inputs. The doors I closed were not punishment. They were positioning. The closed doors of your past were not evidence that I was withholding good things. They were evidence that I was routing you toward better ones. The fourth sign: your intuition does not fail you. When something is wrong, you know it before you can explain it. When someone means you harm, your spirit registers it before your analysis catches up. When a door is not for you, something in you knows it, even when the door looks good on the surface. This is not psychology. This is the navigational system I installed in a soul that is under specific covering. I calibrated it to the precision of your assignment because I cannot have you walking into situations that would compromise what I have designed you to carry. Your intuition is not personality, it is architecture. The fifth sign is the one I want you to sit with, my beloved. It is this: attacks come back multiplied. The Isaiah 54:17 promise is not abstract in your life. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Not no weapon will be aimed at you. Weapons have been aimed at you. What the promise means is that they do not prosper. They do not land with their intended result. The person who aimed the lie at you finds the lie returning to them. The person who worked to close a door for you finds that door closing on them instead. The one who spread the false account finds themselves being questioned. I am not manufacturing this drama. I am simply allowing the harvest of the seeds that were planted against you to return to the planter. You are not required to manage this. It manages itself because I manage it. I want you to think about the people who tried to break you. Let yourself remember their faces. Let yourself remember the specific things that were done. Now release them to me, my child, because what is happening to them is not your responsibility and does not require your attention. You do not need to watch justice arrive. You do not need to document it. You do not need to feel any particular way about it. What you need to understand is that I see, I record, and I respond. Not in human timing and not in human methods, but always every time. Type I release what was never mine. Type it as an act of laying down what you have been carrying that does not belong to you, the weight of the injustice, the mental rehearsal of what should have happened, the ongoing case you have been building in your mind against the people who hurt you. Lay it down. Not because they were right, because your hands need to be free for what I am placing in them next. This is the justice section, my child. And I want you to hear me speak, not with tenderness here, but with authority, because what I am about to say is not a comfort. It is a decree. The people who directed attacks at you were not attacking a civilian. They were attacking someone under my specific covering, and that distinction carries consequences. Isaiah 54:17 is not a gentle suggestion. It is the terms of a covenant. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Every tongue that rises against you in judgment I will condemn, not eventually. Already the condemnation was issued when the attack was launched. The timeline of its visible manifestation is in my hands, not yours. But the sentence was already rendered the moment my child was targeted. I want to be precise about this. The people who worked against you did not make a mistake in judgment. They made a mistake in target selection. They aimed their weapons at someone whose account I personally oversee, whose file I review directly, whose setbacks I personally track toward restoration. And when you aim a weapon at someone I am specifically covering, the outcome is not in question. The question is only timing, and timing I manage with purposes that go beyond what you can see from where you are standing. Some of them have already experienced the beginning of what the ancient law produces. Some of them will experience it in a season you will witness. Some of them will never connect the dots between what they did and what followed, because that is not the point. The point is not that they understand. The point is that they stop, and they will stop, my child, because the terrain around someone who has been declared untouchable becomes increasingly hostile to those who mean harm. The universe does not keep cooperating with attacks on incorruptible targets. The system recognizes what I have declared and adjusts accordingly. I designed you before you were born, Jeremiah 1-5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. This was not a decision I made after watching what you would become. This was a design choice made before you had taken a single breath. The courage in you is not something you developed through difficult circumstances, though the circumstances have refined and deepened what was already there. The courage is not a coping mechanism. It is not a personality trait you cultivated. It is something I placed, something I installed at the level of your soul's architecture before your life began. I knew what you were going to face. I knew what would be required, and I built you to be more than sufficient for it. What you sacrificed in this season was recorded. Every prayer you prayed that seemed to go unanswered, every night you made the choice to be faithful when being faithless would have been so much easier. Every resource you extended, every relationship you protected, every time you kept going without evidence that the going was producing anything, all of it is in the record. The record does not lie, and the record does not expire. Heaven does not lose files. Yours has my signature on it. Type the ceiling is gone. Type it as a declaration of the elevation that has been decreed over your life. Because the limit that was placed on your visibility, on your capacity, on what was available to the expression of what I placed in you, that limit was not my design. It was the interference of forces that could not allow someone carrying what you carry to rise unchecked. But the interference has been declared invalid. The ceiling that was constructed through schemes and strategies formed against you is gone, not weakened, gone. And what follows in your life will reflect that removal in ways that are going to require you to expand your capacity to receive. I am doing something in your life that is not slow. I want to tell you that because you have been waiting so long that you may have started to measure me by the pace of the waiting. The waiting was not evidence that I was not moving. The waiting was the time required to clear the terrain, to prepare the circumstances, to position the resources, to dismantle the interference, and to bring you to the place of readiness that what is coming requires. The door that opens for a soul that has been declared untouchable opens into a territory that demands a particular kind of preparation. I was not slow, I was thorough. Proverbs 28:1. The righteous are as bold as a lion. I need you to receive that verse not as encouragement, but as description. Bold as a lion. Not bold in performance. Not bold when everything is going well and the evidence supports confidence. Bold as a lion, which is to say bold as a fundamental state of being, as a characteristic that exists independent of circumstances. You have been bold in the way this verse describes. In the middle of situations that should have produced timidity, in the middle of experiences that should have produced retreat, you moved forward with a boldness that the people around you could not always explain, and that you yourself sometimes could not explain. That boldness is the fingerprint of the righteous on you. It is the mark of what I placed. Psalm 91:7. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. I want you to apply this verse to your history. Think about the things that came near you and did not land with their full intended force. Think about the situations you walked through that should have destroyed something foundational in you. Think about the conversations that were designed to break your confidence, the schemes designed to break your momentum, the seasons designed to break your faith, and consider, what did they actually produce in you? Not what they threatened, what they actually produced. Because if you look honestly at the record, my child, what you find is that the things that were meant to reduce you expanded you. The things that were meant to silence you deepened you. The things that were meant to end your faith extended its roots further into what I am. That is not luck. That is Psalm 91:7 in operation. The confirmed warrior protocol, when activated, sets things in motion that look, from the outside, like ordinary life events. Doors opening, relationships shifting, opportunities arriving, people leaving, resources appearing from unexpected sources. Recognition coming from directions that were not anticipated. I want you to begin to watch for these with new eyes, not with the skeptical eyes of someone who has been waiting too long and has learned to protect themselves from disappointment by not expecting, with the eyes of someone who knows what has been declared over them and who recognizes what they are looking at when they begin to see the evidence of it appearing. The toxic relationships that are leaving are not abandonment. They are pruning. The spaces being created by their departure are not loss. They are rooms being made available for what is coming. The intuitions you are having about what is next, the quiet certainties that are beginning to settle where questions used to live, those are not wishful thinking. They are the early signals of a season that has already been authorized from my side. You are standing at the beginning of the fullness of what I designed you for, not the practice round, not the preparation, the thing itself. You are part of something larger than your individual story, my child, and I need you to understand this before we close, because this is the piece that changes how you understand your suffering, how you understand your testimony, how you understand the reason the cost was as high as it was. I did not build a network of incorruptible souls for decoration. I built them for a purpose. The world is in a season of extraordinary fear. It is in a season when the voices that say surrender and compromise and take the shortcut are louder than they have ever been, when the pressure to let go of integrity in exchange for comfort has never been more immediate or more sophisticated in its presentation. And in the middle of that, I need people who demonstrate that it is possible to hold, that the fiber is real, that courage is not a strategy for the fortunate, that choosing the hard right thing is available to ordinary human beings who are living ordinary difficult lives. You are one of those people, not as a title, as a function. When you make a brave decision, it does not just affect your life. It sends something into the atmosphere that other souls are breathing. It becomes part of what is available to be drawn on by people who have never met you and will never know your name. Your courage is contagious in dimensions that go beyond what the physical world can see. Everything you sacrificed was not wasted. It was, my beloved, invested in something with a return that has no ceiling. In the coming days, something will try to settle in doubt, the whisper that says, this was just a video, just words, just emotion, just what you wanted to hear after a long season. The whisper will be specific, and it will be quiet, and it will arrive in a moment when you are alone and the feeling of what you received today has faded from the immediate surface. Do not be afraid of that whisper. In fact, I am telling you now so that when it comes, you will recognize it for what it is. Because darkness does not argue with things that do not matter. Darkness does not spend resources challenging messages that carry no actual weight. The fact that the whisper comes at all is the proof that what you heard today was real, that it landed somewhere that darkness needed to respond to, that the word I spoke over you reached its mark. When the doubt comes, remember, I told you it was coming. I told you before it arrived, and I will tell you now what to do with it when it does. Let it pass. Do not argue with it. Do not try to reason your way back to certainty. Simply remember that I told you this would happen, that the counterattack is proof, not evidence against. Stand still. Let it pass, and watch what follows. Because you did not leave, what was sealed is now being opened specifically for you. The record shows you were here. You stayed through the weight of what I revealed, through the testimony of what was said about you in realms you could not see, through the justice that has already been authorized, through the revelation of what is coming. You stayed, and that staying is not incidental. It is not simply patience. It is evidence, more evidence, of the fiber that was described in your file. You stayed because you knew on some level below conscious thought that what I had for you required the staying. That is the Psalm 91:7 soul in operation. That is the righteous bold as a lion. That is the fiber that made them respect you. Type let it return. Type it as an instruction to yourself and as a declaration to heaven. Let the harvest return, let the record return, let the recognition return, let the doors return that were closed through interference. Let the relationships return that were broken through schemes. Let the momentum return that was interrupted through deliberate obstruction. Let it return, not because you are demanding it, because it was always yours. And I am confirming that the time for its return has come, because you did not skip this message, my child. What I am releasing into this moment is specific to you. It was held in reserve for those who remained. Not everyone will receive what I am about to speak. You are receiving it because you are still here. And what I am releasing is this. The weight lifts from here, not because the journey is over, because you have been confirmed at a level that changes what the journey looks like going forward. You are no longer carrying what you have been carrying without the acknowledgement of what it is. You now know what it costs and what it is worth and what it means and what it has produced. And knowing changes everything. Type, I receive this. Type it slowly. Type it as someone who has waited for something real and is finally holding it. Type it as the signature on what was always yours. Because when you type it, heaven reads it. When you type it, the angels who have been assigned to your covering receive it as your acknowledgement of what they have been doing in your defense while you carried forward without seeing them. When you type it, I receive it as your response to everything I have done in secret and am now making known. I receive this. Let that be the declaration of this moment. My child, I want to close by speaking to what is ahead, because I do not want you to leave this message without carrying forward the fullness of what I came to give you. What is coming for you is not simply the absence of what was blocking you. It is the presence of what was prepared for you. Those two things are different, and I want you to hold that difference. Absence of the block means freedom. Presence of the prepared means fulfillment. I am giving you both. The people who were draining what you carried, they are leaving or have already gone. The doors that were closed through interference are already in the process of opening. Not all at once, because I know what order serves you best, but in a sequence that will become unmistakably clear. The recognition that was withheld is being released. The resources that were held back are being positioned. The relationships that are meant for this season of your life are being moved toward you. And through all of it, my beloved, I will be precisely where I have always been, watching, recording. Working in the details you cannot see, going before you into every room you are about to enter, preparing the terrain ahead of your arrival. I am not new to this. I have never stepped away. And what I am doing for you now is not a course correction after years of neglect. It is the fulfillment of a plan that has been in motion since before you took your first breath. Since before anyone had a chance to file a false report against you, since before the first attack was aimed, since before the first fear was introduced. I knew you before you were born. I designed what is in you. I authorized what you have carried, and now I am releasing what was always waiting on the other side of it. If the name of someone specific is on your heart right now, the person you thought of while you were here, the one who also carries something heavy and who needs to know that their fight has not gone unwitnessed. I want to ask you to do something. Sow a seed for them, not in a transaction, not as a payment, as an act of faith on their behalf, as the declaration that you believe what you just received is real enough to plant something in their name. Visit the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. What you sow in courage and faith over another person's life is returned to you with the multiplication of heaven. That is not a promise I make lightly. It is the operating law of a kingdom where nothing given in faith is ever lost. Type "It is already done." Type it as the last declaration of this moment. Type it as someone who received a word that was not conditional, that did not depend on your performance or your worthiness, or whether you had the right response or the right emotion. It was already done before you clicked. It was already done before you found this. The declaration was made, the list was updated, the record was confirmed, the warrant for what is coming over your life was already issued. It is already done, my child. You held on when holding on was everything you had. You chose the harder right path when the easier wrong one was not just available but appealing. You refused the compromise when the compromise had a price tag small enough to seem invisible. You walked away from the revenge when the revenge was justifiable. You processed the fear and chose forward anyway. You carried the weight without demanding to be seen. You prayed in the parking lot and walked through the door. You typed the resignation letter and closed the laptop. You stood in the middle of the worst possible season and you said, "I do this even though I am afraid. I watched all of it. I recorded all of it. And now I am releasing all of it into a season that is finally calibrated to what you have proven yourself to be. You are untouchable, my beloved. Not because you are without wounds, because your wounds have not changed your fiber. You are untouchable because the one who reviewed your complete file in a meeting I was watching decided, with every sophisticated tool available to him, that your integrity is beyond his reach. And I confirmed it, and I am confirming it to you now. Go forward, my child, not cautiously, not braced, not with one eye on the past and one hand protecting what you built. Go forward with the knowledge of what was declared over you. Go forward as someone who knows their file has been reviewed and found to be exactly what it was designed to be. Go forward as a warrior who has been confirmed. Go forward as someone who made the adversary of every human soul look at the record of their ordinary, costly, faithful, imperfect, extraordinary life and say, "I respect this." You were never small. You were never forgotten. You were never unprotected. You were simply not yet in the season where I was ready to tell you what I was doing. That season is now. I love you. I have always loved you. And I am with you in every moment of what comes next. Amen.